Hey everyone, my name is Fernandez. I'm 26 years old, and I'm from Brazil. Believe it or not, just 5 months ago I couldn't speak a single complete sentence in English, not even a simple "how are you," without overthinking it. I felt completely lost. Today, I want to share how I learned English in only 5 months without expensive classes, without traveling to an English-speaking country, and without wasting hours on ineffective methods. But this isn't just my story, it might be yours too. If you've ever felt stuck, frustrated, or embarrassed because of your English, keep listening, because I was exactly where you are. And I promise that if you follow my journey step by step, you'll know exactly how to improve your English. My journey didn't begin with motivation, it began with a painful failure that changed everything. I had always dreamed of working for an international company, especially as a software engineer at a major tech firm. I loved coding, I was good at it, and I worked day and night to become the best. After years of effort, my opportunity finally arrived. I applied to a huge company in the United States, and the recruiter emailed me, "Congratulations, you've been selected for an interview." I was thrilled. I imagined myself living abroad, earning a great salary, and working with top professionals. But then the interview came. I still remember it clearly. I opened Zoom and saw 3 interviewers, all native English speakers. They started talking, and it felt like someone had pressed fast forward on their voices. I couldn't understand anything. Their very first question was, "Fernandez, can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience in software development?" I panicked. I knew exactly what to say in my mind, but the words refused to come out. All I managed was, "Yes, I am, software. I do coding, many projects, good, very good." Their silence felt like a knife in my stomach. They asked another question, but again, I couldn't answer. Eventually, one of them smiled politely and said, "All right, Fernandez, thank you for your time." I knew what that meant. I had failed not because I wasn't skilled, but because I couldn't speak English. That day, I realized the true power of English. It wasn't just a language, it was the key to my dream, and I didn't have that key. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, and angry at myself. For years, I had told myself, "I don't need English. My work is enough." But now I understood the truth, without English, I was invisible. That night, I made a decision: I would learn English, and I would learn it fast. Most people, when they begin learning English, immediately pay for expensive courses, but I didn't, because I had already tried them before and they simply didn't work. A year earlier, I signed up for an online English class where the teacher made me memorize long vocabulary lists, complete grammar exercises, and study boring rules, yet after 3 months, when I tried to have a real conversation, I still couldn't speak. That's when I realized that expensive classes were not the solution. If I truly wanted to learn English fast, I needed something different, something practical and effective in real life. That realization led me to create the 5-month method that completely changed everything. In the first 15 days, I focused on avoiding the biggest mistake beginners make, thinking they need more words. I used to believe that if I learned 1,000 new words, I would become fluent, but the truth was that I already knew hundreds, and I still couldn't speak. So, during those first 2 weeks, I didn't learn any new vocabulary at all. Instead, I focused on using the words I already knew. I started by creating a survival sentence list: 50 simple, everyday sentences I needed in real life, like "Hi, how are you, can you repeat that, I don't understand, I am learning English, and I need a coffee, please." Every morning, I read all 50 sentences out loud 10 times. At first, my mouth felt slow and uncomfortable, but after about 5 days, these sentences felt natural and automatic. I also began speaking to myself in English every single day. Whenever I was alone, I described everything I was doing. In the shower I said, "I'm taking a shower, the water is hot, I feel relaxed," and while cooking breakfast I said, "I'm making eggs, I like eggs, they're easy to cook." It felt strange at first, but soon I realized that this was my private classroom, no fear, no judgment, just practice. And within 1 week, my brain slowly started thinking in English for the very first time. In English, the third thing I did was practice 5 sentences a day, but with a twist. Every day, I chose 5 sentences from movies or real conversations, and instead of simply reading them, I copied them exactly the way native speakers said them. I repeated each sentence 10 times, matching their emotion, speed, and pronunciation. This helped me fix my accent and sound far more natural. By the end of the first 15 days, something surprising happened. I stopped translating in my head. I could say basic sentences automatically, and for the first time, I felt confident. But this was only the beginning. After those first 2 weeks, I started what I call the real practice phase. Now that I could speak simple sentences without thinking, I wanted more. I wanted real conversations. I wanted to understand native speakers without translation and speak smoothly without freezing. So I created a new plan, one that completely changed my progress. I realized that when I tried to speak English, my brain felt slow. I knew the words, but I couldn't connect them quickly. I needed a method that trained my brain to think in English naturally. That's when I started using what I now call the question-answer method. It's simple but incredibly powerful. I asked myself a question in English, answered it immediately without overthinking, and then repeated the process many times while adding new details. For example, I began with an easy question: "What did you do today?" At first, my answer was short: "I worked." But I pushed myself to expand. "I worked on my project." Then I worked on my project for 3 hours, and later I worked on my project for 3 hours, then I took a break, and finally I worked on my project for 3 hours, then I took a break and had some coffee. Each time, I added more details, and this trained my brain to think quickly in English. I did the same with other questions, like "What did you eat for breakfast?" My first answer was "I ate eggs," then "I ate eggs and toast," then "I ate eggs, toast, and a banana," and finally "I ate eggs, toast, and a banana" because I was really hungry. Each expansion made my brain faster, my speaking smoother, and my English more natural. I ate eggs, toast, and a banana because I was really hungry and I love having a big breakfast. I practiced this question-answer method every single day for at least 30 minutes, and my speaking speed improved dramatically. My sentences became longer, my thoughts flowed faster, and I completely stopped translating in my head. But another big problem remained: my pronunciation. Even though I could speak English, I still sounded very foreign. Native speakers could understand me, but my accent was strong. So I started using the echo technique, which became the most effective pronunciation exercise I had ever tried, and I did it without any teacher. The process was simple. I listened to a native speaker in a movie, on YouTube, or in a podcast. I paused the audio after each sentence, and then I repeated it exactly the same way, same speed, same tone, same emotion. For example, I used a short clip from a movie where the character said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I paused and repeated it, "I don't know what you're talking about." At first it felt difficult, but after repeating it 10 times, my voice started sounding much closer to the native speaker. I did the same with podcasts. For instance, it was a beautiful day, so I decided to go for a walk. I paused and echoed that sentence too. I practiced this for 30 minutes every day, and after 1 month, my pronunciation improved so much that native speakers began saying, "Wow, your English sounds really natural." I also knew vocabulary was important, but memorizing long word lists never worked for me, so I needed a smarter method. That's when I started using the story method. Every day, I picked 5 new words, created a short story using all 5, read the story out loud 10 times, and then tried to use those words in real conversations. For example, my words were excited, invitation, party, arrive, surprise, and my story was, I was very excited because I received an invitation to a big party. When I arrived at the party, I got a huge surprise. It was my birthday. I practiced this every day, and after 3 months, I had learned more than 1,000 new words without memorizing anything. Another big problem many learners face is that they think in their native language first and then translate into English, which makes speaking slow and unnatural. To fix this, I trained my brain to think directly in English. I began by describing everything around me in English. For example, when I walked outside, I would say in my mind, the sky is blue, the weather is hot, I see people walking, that man is wearing a red shirt. I also asked myself questions and answered them in English, like what am I doing right now, and I would respond, I'm sitting in a chair, drinking coffee, and writing in my notebook. Every night, I wrote a short journal entry in English. At first, my sentences were very simple, but after a month, my writing started to feel more natural. Slowly, I noticed something amazing. English words began coming to my mind automatically without translation. I also created a powerful rule for myself. I had to speak English for at least 2 hours every single day, no excuses. If I had no one to talk to, I talked to myself. If I was busy, I spoke while doing daily activities like cooking, cleaning, or walking. And whenever I felt lazy, I reminded myself, English is my future. I cannot quit. As my listening and speaking habits grew stronger, I realized something important. Improving pronunciation and fluency wasn't enough. I needed to understand grammar and structure properly so that I could speak clearly and naturally. I started paying close attention to how native speakers formed their sentences. Instead of just repeating sentences, I asked myself why they were structured that way. For example, I often heard people say, I have been learning English for 5 months, even though in school I had learned, I am learning English for 5 months. That was my first big realization. The English we learn in school is often different from real-life English. So I started researching the differences. I studied when people actually use the present perfect tense and why they say I have been learning instead of I am learning. These small details made a huge difference in sounding natural. I also wrote down common sentence patterns and practiced them daily. Prepositions were one of my biggest challenges on the bus but in the car, at night but in the morning. To fix this, I carried a small notebook and wrote down confusing prepositions with examples. Whenever I had doubts, I searched for answers or listened to how native speakers used them in real contexts. To push myself further, I continued writing my daily diary. At first my writing looked like, today I went to work. I was tired. I ate pizza. It was good. But I wanted to sound more natural, so I studied how native speakers wrote in blogs, books, and articles. I paid attention to their sentence structure and rhythm, and I tried to copy that style in my diary. One technique that accelerated my learning even more was shadowing. I started shadowing native speakers by finding videos online, putting on my headphones, and repeating every word immediately after them while matching their speed and pronunciation. I did this for at least 20 minutes a day, and within a few weeks, my pronunciation improved noticeably. Another technique that helped me a lot was watching English movies with subtitles, but instead of watching passively, I paused after every sentence and repeated it out loud, focusing on pronunciation, tone, and rhythm. Slowly, my English began to sound more natural. During this stage, I realized something very important. English is not just about words and grammar, it's also about confidence. Many learners know English but are too afraid to speak it. So I made a decision that changed everything. I would not be scared of making mistakes. I started speaking English whenever I had the chance at work, in stores, with friends even when I wasn't completely sure about my sentences. And I discovered something surprising: people understood me, even if I made small mistakes. Nobody laughed. Instead, they listened, and this gave me the confidence to continue. But then I faced my biggest fear: talking to native English speakers. I was terrified that they wouldn't understand me or that I would freeze. To overcome this, I prepared 10 common conversation topics and practiced them every day. Questions like "How was your day?" "What do you do for work?" and "What's your favorite food?" I practiced answering these questions fluently so that I would never be stuck in silence. Finally, I took the leap and joined an online English speaking group with people from different countries. At first, I was extremely nervous, but soon I realized everyone there was learning just like me. I made new friends, practiced daily, and discovered that learning English could actually be fun. By the time I reached the final stage of my English journey, everything had started to change. I felt an unshakable confidence growing inside me. I was no longer the same person who had once been rejected because of poor English skills. I had transformed myself step by step through consistent effort, daily practice, and the right mindset. Now, I want to share the last and most important lessons I learned so that you, too, can achieve fluency. One day, I was speaking to myself in the mirror, just as I had done many times before, but this time, something was different. I wasn't hesitating. I wasn't translating in my head. The words were flowing naturally. It felt like magic, but in reality, it was simply the result of months of dedication. That same day, I decided to test my progress by having a deep conversation with a native speaker. I joined an online meeting where people from different countries discussed various topics. At first, I was nervous, but I reminded myself, I've worked too hard to doubt myself now. And then I spoke. The words came out clearly and confidently. I didn't struggle to find the right expressions. I understood what others were saying without feeling lost. People listened to me, nodded in agreement, and even asked me questions. It was an incredible moment, the moment I realized I had finally achieved fluency. 5 months after starting my journey, I applied for my dream job again. But this time, I wasn't the same Jack who had walked in nervously months before. I wasn't the guy who hesitated or felt small. I wasn't the person who couldn't find the right words. This time, I walked into that interview room with confidence. I sat in front of the interviewer not as someone who feared English, but as someone who had mastered it. I spoke clearly, and I answered every question with ease. In that moment, I wasn't just speaking English, I was owning it. I could see it in their eyes. They were impressed, not only with my language skills but with my effort, my persistence, and the transformation I had gone through. A few days later, I received the call I had been hoping for, and I will never forget that moment. "Jack, congratulations, you got the job." For a second, I couldn't believe it. My dream job. The same company that had rejected me before, but now they wanted me. My starting salary was $5,000 a month, more than I had ever imagined earning. I stood there holding my phone, my hands shaking, my eyes filling with tears. The first thing I did was call my parents. "Mom, Dad, I did it," I said. My mother immediately began to cry, and my father, a man who rarely shows emotion, simply said, "We always knew you could." In that moment, I realized that I wasn't just doing this for myself, I was doing it for them too. When I received my first salary, I bought my father a beautiful watch he had always wanted but never allowed himself to buy. For my mother, I chose a gold necklace because she had sacrificed so much for me and our family, and now it was my turn to give back. When I handed them the gifts, they refused at first, saying they didn't need anything, but I shook my head and said, "This is my way of saying thank you. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." In that moment, I understood that everything I had been through was worth it. Every struggle, every late night of studying, every moment of frustration, every time I felt like giving up, it was all worth it. And through this journey, I realized something powerful: mindset is everything. Most people fail to learn English because they believe they can't. I used to think the same way, but the moment I changed my mindset, everything changed. I told myself that English was not difficult and that I could learn it just like any other skill. And that belief became the foundation of my transformation. I stopped saying, "I am bad at English," and started telling myself, "I am improving every day." I realized that if you think you can't do something, you won't, but if you believe you can, you will find a way. I made it a point to surround myself with English and integrate it into my daily life. I changed my phone's language to English, watched only English content, listened to English songs even when I didn't understand all the lyrics, and followed English-speaking influencers on social media. Every day, I was feeding my brain with English. I also made it a habit to speak and think in English constantly. Whenever I looked at an object, I would name it in English. For example, if I saw a car, I would say, "That's a blue car. It's moving fast." Small habits like this helped me build my vocabulary naturally. Another key part of my learning was speaking without fear. Many people are afraid of making mistakes, but mistakes are an essential part of learning. I used to be scared of speaking, but then I realized that native speakers don't care if you make mistakes, they appreciate your effort. So I forced myself to speak as much as possible. I talked to shopkeepers in English, asked strangers for directions in English, and even practiced speaking to myself whenever I was alone. The more I spoke, the better I became. At the same time, I trained my listening skills through active listening and shadowing. Listening is just as important as speaking, so I immersed myself in English podcasts, audiobooks, and conversations, but I didn't just listen passively. I actively repeated and echoed what I heard to improve both comprehension and pronunciation. I practiced shadowing, which means listening to a sentence and immediately repeating it, mimicking the pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. This helped me improve both my accent and fluency. I also learned to expand my vocabulary smartly. At first, I tried memorizing long lists of words, but I quickly realized that was useless. Instead, I learned words in context and focused on phrases rather than single words. For example, instead of memorizing the word happy, I learned phrases like, "I feel so happy today," or "That movie made me really happy." Learning words this way made them easier to remember and use naturally. When it came to grammar, I didn't spend hours on books. I learned grammar naturally through listening and speaking. Whenever I made a mistake, I noted it and corrected myself. For example, I used to say, "He go to school," and when someone corrected me, I understood, "He goes to school." The best way to learn grammar is by using the language, not memorizing rules. One of the most important lessons I learned is that consistency matters more than perfection. Some people wait until they know everything perfectly before speaking, but I started speaking from day one. Even when I only knew a few words, I used them. I made a rule to do something in English every day. Some days I spoke for 10 minutes, other days I wrote a short paragraph or listened to a podcast. The key was consistency. Even on lazy or difficult days, I did something. You don't need expensive classes or a perfect environment, you just need a strong desire and a commitment to practice every day. Imagine yourself 6 months from now, speaking English fluently and confidently, with doors opening to new opportunities, and feeling proud of yourself. Start today. Speak, listen, practice, and never give up. This is not just about learning English, it's about changing your life. And let me tell you this, if I can do it, you can too. It doesn't matter where you start or how bad your English seems. What matters is that you start right now. I know it's hard, and it can feel impossible sometimes, but the only thing standing between you and fluency is consistency. Stop doubting yourself. Stop making excuses. Surround yourself with English. Speak, listen, read, and write every single day. Make mistakes, learn from them, and improve, because the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret lasts forever. So what will you choose? Choose discipline, choose growth, choose success. Your journey to fluency starts now. If this story inspired you, like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'll be with you every step of the way. Let's do this together.